Hello, good morning, Mr. Kapoor. Could you please introduce yourself quickly?
As you said, my name is Sanjay Kapoor. I'm editor of Hard News Magazine, which is a South Asian partner of Le Monde Diplomatique. We have been around in circulation for more than 14 years. We bring it out from Delhi. Our specialization is foreign policy and domestic issues. And we try to do some long-form writing in that. We have been following Ukraine war very closely, and also the neighborhood. So we can pretty much say that we know our subject well.
Thank you so much for being here. We are looking forward to the roundtable discussion as well. My first question to you is that what should we do to ensure better energy resource management in our region per se?
This is a very complicated question for the simple reason because there are a lot of things that drive a sustainable energy model for any country. First of all, as Ukraine crisis has amply told the world that you need to have very sharp diplomacy to ensure that a situation like the Ukraine-Russia conflict doesn't happen. And not just the Ukraine, but the entire European countries have become captive to what Russia was doing. They depended on Russia for supply of cheap gas, and suddenly they are confronted by a situation where the conflict takes place and everybody is in a situation of deep distress. Their economy is in shambles and they don't know what is really going to happen in the not too far away long term. So in a certain way, there are lessons to be learned for a country like India and the South Asia, primarily because we have to create circumstances in which you have a committed supply of electricity, because that is a thing that powers any economy, to ensure that there is no poverty and you can have many things that can be delivered to you. And to have a sustainable energy model, you need to have, learn everything that Russia may have told the world to do, is to have local partnerships, local resources that has to be created. So we are talking about renewable energy. You need to have very diverse sources, like for instance you need to go back to a bit on coal, which although it is bad energy, but the moment in a transitional economy you may need it. You have to go for gas, you have to go for oil, and you have to be sure that nothing wrecks your plan in ensuring that people get energy in a sustained level.
Precisely, and I think that leads perfectly to my second question, that how can we transition to a more sustainable energy resources and renewable energy resources whilst maintaining the current flow?
This is actually a very dynamic process. I mean, there is nothing that is very assured, because technology is changing rapidly. Since the time the Ukraine war started, we had started talking more about hydrogen, energy coming from hydrogen. I mean, there's something that was not even discussed not too long back, but now we are talking about all kinds of energy sources. We're talking about liquefied natural gas, we're talking about LNG terminal, we are talking about many things that weren't in discussion earlier. So in a certain way, we need to be clear about how do we go about it. India, the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, announced in 2026, COP26 last year in Glasgow, that India would be, generating about 450 gigawatts of solar energy, which means about generating 40 to 45 GW solar power every year, which means colossal investment. But that is what the commitment is, that sooner than later we'll have more than 40 to 50% of our energy needs being met by solar power. So if we are on course, because the target is not too far away, we are supposed to do all this by 2030. And when we do that, I'm sure it would be going in the direction that you are suggesting, that we do it in a manner where one energy source melts into the other.
And do you think to foster certain sustainable energy resources, can there be an inter-regional cooperation? We, as a South Asia region, we have a lot of potential when it comes to sustainable energy resources, but that potential has not been cashed upon. So do you think there can be an inter-regional cooperation for energy resource management in general?
You know, as I said in the very outset, that a lot of our energy concerns or policy would be driven by our diplomacy, our relationship with our neighbors, So if you look from the South Asian context, you will find that India and Pakistan don't really have a great relationship. But long ago, when things were all right, there was an attempt to have a rapprochement between these two countries by sharing power. Because Pakistan was power strapped, and there was an attempt that there's some power can go from Punjab and the other places. So that hasn't happened, but subsequent to that, we have other constructs like BIMSTEC is there, BBIN is there. These are two regional constructs which have been made by India, and they are also in conversation with each other to ensure that there is a regional connectivity. Till I think last year, India has created protocols between various countries about how electricity can be transacted through a board. And the belief is that in the South Asia, if you transact electricity with each other, you could generate about $146 billion of electricity transaction. This is the kind of business you can create for the entire South Asian countries, and we aren't there anywhere, at the moment. So what we're talking about is that once you have all the systems in place, about 8 to 9 billion per year would be something that would be given. And in the last 2-3 years, when you had COVID, there was a surplus electricity which was there in India, which was in a certain way a setback for Nepal, because Nepal could not be selling electricity to India because India didn't need it, and it felt to people in Nepal that the relationship would get impacted. So we have to find a way in which the grid is such that the surplus electricity from this region can also be sent somewhere else. Because geographically, if you look at it, then Pakistan has to look after itself from Iran or from Central Asia. That is an area which is dealing with the energy issues from the other side. The other areas like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka has had a major crisis in the last 1 year or so, especially after the Ukraine war escalated. And they have been short on energy, and they've found some relief coming in from India, but it wasn't enough. So again, they will have to rely basically on the largesse, which will probably come from multilateral agencies and from a neighborhood, but it's a long haul. But I'm sure they would have to somehow find a solution within. Maybe renewables would have to come up.
Yes, and I think as you would have said, as you just said, that if we work together better in that manner, maybe there is a surplus of energy as well, and which can be then, do you think there is a possibility then to export it to the other regions, which as a South Asian region, maybe if we produce energy surplus, do you think we can export it to other region which needs it?
I'm not very sure whether electricity can be transported beyond a point. I don't know how much China would be keen to be part of it. If China is not, then it's a different story. But surely what is happening at the level of liquefied natural gas, that has been happening. Countries which have LNG terminal are also becoming exporters. They get gas from somewhere and then they process it and they send it out. So that is a kind of thing that may be possible. But what is very important that after the Ukraine war, there's a greater attention about how do you ensure sustainable, uninterrupted energy supply to your communities. And that is where all the countries and the governments are really looking at the moment.
And what do you think we as a region, to be honest, we are doing better than the other regions when it comes to energy resources, conserving the energy and also moving towards a sustainable solution?
I think largely what has happened in that, although all wars in the modern times have flowed from Europe, so Asia in a certain way did not get sucked into that war. We managed to take certain independent decisions, and in the process, what has happened that the calamity and the crisis that the European countries have faced hasn't really visited us. We managed to do things that maybe have antagonize some powers, antagonize some people, that we are taking certain decisions which are morally reprehensible. But for the larger good, I think they have been of great use. People haven't been impacted so much by energy crisis in India. Sri Lanka has been a calamity that we have all discussed, and I'm sure, I hope that things change rapidly very soon. But Bangladesh is not in such a bad shape, although they have begun to feel the pinch also.
Yeah.
And I'm sure India, as a large neighbor, should be coming to their help very soon. And so is Nepal. But I think the crisis hasn't really spun out of control in India for whatever reasons that we have discussed. But in the other areas where the foreign exchange was, I think, more fragile, the reserves, they have been deeply impacted.
That is true. Thank you so much for giving your time today, and I look forward to having you in the roundtable discussion. And it was very enlightening and enriching to have this interview with you. Thank you so much, Mr.